What if I told you that you're throwing away 3 to 4 hours every single day without even realizing it, while wondering why you feel so busy but accomplish so little? Picture this. You work 10 to 12 hours a day. You're constantly rushing between tasks. Your to-do list keeps growing. Yet at the end of each week, you feel like you've made no real progress on what truly matters. Meanwhile, you watch others who seem to have all the time in the world, accomplishing more in a few focused hours than you do in entire days. Here's the painful truth. You've been trapped by 6 invisible time thieves that are stealing your most precious resource. These aren't obvious distractions. They're behaviors that actually make you feel productive, while secretly sabotaging your success. I'm about to reveal the 6 biggest time wasters that successful people completely avoid, and show you how eliminating just one of these can instantly give you back hours every day. And the 6th time waster? It's something 90% of Americans do for over 4 hours daily, thinking it's harmless relaxation when it's actually rewiring your brain for failure. Hit subscribe and comment "Time Freedom" if you're ready to stop wasting precious hours and start reclaiming your life. The first time waster will shock you because everyone thinks it makes them more productive. Time waster 1. Multitasking. The first and most deceptive time waster that's stealing your productivity is multitasking. You've been told it's a superpower, a skill that successful people master to get more done in less time. But here's the brutal truth. Multitasking is a myth that's destroying your ability to accomplish anything meaningful. Your brain literally cannot focus on multiple complex tasks simultaneously. It's switching rapidly between them, and every switch costs you time, energy, and quality. But that's just the obvious part. The first time waster will shock you because everyone thinks it makes them more productive. In the ancient training grounds, where the kingdom's finest warriors honed their skills, there lived 2 archers who were equally talented and had trained under the same master for many years. Both men possessed exceptional accuracy and had proven themselves in countless practice sessions, but their approaches to demonstrating their abilities would reveal everything about the nature of focus and true mastery. The first archer was eager to impress observers with his versatility and speed. During practice sessions, he would position himself in the center of the training ground, surrounded by multiple targets at various distances and angles. His philosophy was simple. Why master one target when I can hit them all? He would rapidly fire arrows in quick succession, spinning and turning to engage different targets, creating an impressive display of activity and motion. Spectators were initially amazed by this dynamic performance. The archer appeared incredibly skilled, moving fluidly between targets, his bow constantly in motion, arrows flying in multiple directions. The sheer volume of his activity suggested extraordinary productivity and capability. However, careful observers began to notice a troubling pattern. While he hit many targets, few of his arrows found the center rings. His accuracy suffered because his attention was constantly divided. The second archer took a completely different approach that seemed almost boring in comparison. He would position himself before a single target and spend considerable time studying it, examining the wind conditions, adjusting his stance, and preparing his mind for perfect execution. Only when he achieved complete focus would he draw his bow and release a single, precisely aimed arrow. This methodical archer would then move to the next target and repeat the entire process. His approach appeared slower and less impressive to casual observers, but the results told a different story. Every arrow he released found its mark with devastating accuracy. While his colleague was rapidly firing at multiple targets with mediocre results, the focused archer was consistently achieving perfect shots. After months of training, the difference became undeniable. The first archer had developed a reputation for being busy and energetic, but unreliable when precision mattered. The second archer was recognized as the kingdom's most accurate marksman and was chosen for the most critical military missions. Here's what that story reveals about your daily productivity. When you try to answer emails while attending meetings, text during phone calls, or work on multiple projects simultaneously, you're not being efficient, you're being ineffective. Research shows it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully refocus after switching tasks. Here's where most productive people make a crucial distinction that changes everything. Time waster 2. Worrying. The second massive time waster stealing your mental energy is worrying, that endless loop of anxious thoughts about things you cannot control. Most people spend hours each day consumed by what-if scenarios, imagining disasters that may never happen, while accomplishing absolutely nothing productive. Worry is literally interest paid on trouble that may never come, yet it drains your mental capacity as if the problems were already real. Here's where most productive people make a crucial distinction that changes everything. High in the mountains, where weather patterns could change without warning, there lived two watchmen whose job was to observe conditions and protect their village from dangerous storms. Both men were equally experienced and cared deeply about their community's safety. But their approaches to handling uncertainty and potential threats revealed profound differences in wisdom about mental energy and effective preparation. The first watchman was consumed by constant anxiety about every cloud formation he observed. When he spotted storm clouds on the distant horizon, he would spend hours fixating on all the terrible possibilities. What if this becomes a devastating hurricane? What if it destroys the entire village? What if people died because I didn't warn them soon enough? His mind would race through dozens of catastrophic scenarios, each one more frightening than the last. This anxious watchman would pace nervously, lose sleep, worrying about potential disasters, and exhaust himself mentally rehearsing conversations about warnings he might need to give. His worry consumed so much mental energy that he often forgot to perform basic preparation tasks. He was so busy imagining problems that he failed to maintain his weather instruments, organize emergency supplies, or create clear communication protocols with village leaders. The second watchman took a radically different approach that seemed almost callous to outside observers. When he noticed concerning weather patterns, instead of spiraling into anxiety, he would ask himself a simple question: what can I actually control about this situation? This practical watchman understood that worry was mental energy spent on problems that might never occur. Rather than imagining every possible catastrophe, the second watchman focused his energy on concrete preparations. He maintained detailed weather logs, kept emergency equipment in perfect condition, established clear warning systems with village leaders, and created evacuation protocols for different scenarios. When storms actually threatened the village, he was ready with facts, plans, and immediate actions rather than exhausted from days of useless worry. Over the years, both men faced the same unpredictable weather patterns, but their effectiveness was dramatically different. The first watchman's constant anxiety made him unreliable and exhausted when real emergencies arose. Village leaders began to ignore his warnings because he cried wolf too often. The second watchman became trusted and respected because when he spoke, it was with clarity and actionable information rather than panic. Here's what that story reveals about worry's impact on your productivity. When you spend mental energy imagining all the ways your presentation could go wrong, your business could fail, or your relationships could deteriorate, you're not preparing. You're paralyzing yourself. That same mental energy could be directed toward actual preparation, skill building, or problem solving. Wait, the most important part is in the following story about a perfectionist trap that destroys more dreams than failure ever could. Time waster 3. Perfectionism. The third devastating time waster that's sabotaging your success is perfectionism. The belief that something must be flawless before it can be shared, launched, or completed. This isn't about having high standards. It's about the paralyzing fear that keeps you endlessly tweaking, revising, and improving, instead of finishing and moving forward. Perfect is the enemy of done, And while you're polishing one project to impossible standards, others are launching 10 good enough projects and learning from real-world feedback. Wait, the most important part is in the following story about a perfectionist trap that destroys more dreams than failure ever could. In the artistic quarter of a Renaissance city, there worked two painters who had studied under the same master and possessed comparable natural talent. Both men dreamed of creating works that would be remembered for generations. But their approaches to their craft would determine vastly different artistic legacies and levels of success. The first painter was obsessed with creating the perfect masterpiece. When he received a commission for a portrait, he would begin with meticulous planning, spending weeks selecting the ideal canvas, mixing precisely the right pigments, and sketching preliminary studies from every conceivable angle. Once he finally began painting, he would work and rework each section endlessly, never satisfied with any element of the composition. This perfectionist painter would spend months on a single brushstroke, constantly scraping away paint and starting over because the color wasn't quite right or the texture didn't meet his impossible standards. He would study his work obsessively, finding flaws that no one else could detect, and insisting that he couldn't consider the piece finished until every detail achieved absolute perfection. Years would pass with the first painter working on the same painting, tweaking and adjusting, never quite ready to show it to clients or the public. His studio was filled with partially completed works that he deemed not quite ready, despite each being more beautiful than most artists ever achieved. His pursuit of perfection had become a prison that prevented him from ever completing anything. The second painter took a fundamentally different approach that initially seemed almost careless to outside observers. When he received commissions, he would plan thoughtfully but briefly, then begin painting with clear intention and decisive action. His philosophy was simple. A finished painting that brings joy is worth more than a perfect painting that never exists. This productive painter understood that each completed work taught him valuable lessons that improved his next piece. While his colleague perfected one painting endlessly, he completed dozens of works, each one better than the last, through accumulated experience and practice. His rapid output allowed him to experiment with different techniques, receive feedback from clients, and develop his distinctive style. After 5 years, the contrast was striking. The perfectionist painter had never completed a single commission and remained unknown despite his obvious talent. The productive painter had created an impressive portfolio, built a thriving business, and earned recognition as one of the city's most accomplished artists. Here's what that story reveals about perfectionism's hidden cost. While you're endlessly perfecting your business plan, website, or presentation, others are launching imperfect versions, learning from real feedback, and improving through iteration rather than imagination. This next time waster is disguised as being helpful and responsible, but it's actually stealing your most valuable asset. Time waster 4. Saying yes to everything. The fourth time waster that's secretly destroying your productivity is saying yes to everything that comes your way. You think you're being helpful, responsible, and building relationships, but in reality, you're spreading yourself so thin that you become ineffective at everything. When you say yes to everything, you're actually saying no to your own priorities, goals, and the work that truly matters. Every yes to someone else's agenda is a no to your own. This next time waster is disguised as being helpful and responsible, but it's actually stealing your most valuable asset. In a prosperous valley where multiple communities thrived, there lived two village leaders who were both beloved by their people and faced with constant requests for their time, attention, and resources. Both men were equally capable and genuinely cared about serving their communities. But their approaches to managing demands on their leadership would reveal profound differences in effectiveness and impact. The first leader believed that good leadership meant never disappointing anyone who asked for help. When villagers approached him with requests, mediating disputes, attending ceremonies, reviewing proposals, solving problems, or simply listening to concerns, he would immediately agree to everything. "A true leader serves everyone," he would say, proudly accepting every invitation and responsibility that came his way. This well-intentioned leader's calendar became impossibly packed. He would rush from one commitment to another, arriving late to meetings because the previous obligation had run over. During conversations, he was often distracted, thinking about the next appointment or checking the time. His attention was divided among so many different issues that he could rarely give any single problem the deep thought it deserved. Despite his constant activity and genuine desire to help, the first leader found himself perpetually behind schedule, stressed, and ironically, less helpful to his community. Important village projects stagnated because he lacked time for proper planning. Critical decisions were delayed because he was too busy with minor issues. His effectiveness diminished as his commitments multiplied. The second leader took a more strategic approach that initially seemed less accommodating to some villagers. When people brought requests to him, he would listen carefully and then ask himself, "Is this the best use of my unique skills and position? Can someone else handle this effectively? Does this align with our village's most important priorities?" This selective leader would politely decline requests that others could handle, or that didn't align with his core responsibilities. Instead, he focused his energy on the few initiatives that truly required his leadership: long-term planning, major conflict resolution, and decisions that would impact the entire community's future. While the first leader attended every social gathering, the second leader used his free time to study other successful communities, to develop comprehensive strategies, and build relationships with neighboring villages that enhanced trade and security. His focused approach allowed him to excel in areas where leadership truly mattered. After 2 years, the results were undeniable. The first leader was beloved, but ineffective, running constantly but accomplishing little of lasting value. The second leader had transformed his village into the most prosperous and well-organized community in the region. Here's what that story teaches about protecting your time. When you say yes to every request, meeting, and social obligation, you're not being generous, you're being ineffective. Your unique value comes from focusing your best energy on your highest priorities. All of the above becomes meaningless if you fall into this mental trap that makes you feel productive while accomplishing nothing. Time waster 5. Procrastination. The fifth time waster that's silently sabotaging your future is procrastination, that seemingly innocent habit of delaying important tasks until later, when conditions will be more perfect. You tell yourself you're being strategic, waiting for the right moment, gathering more information, or preparing more thoroughly. But in reality, you're trading your most valuable opportunities for the illusion of perfect timing that never actually arrives. All of the above becomes meaningless if you fall into this mental trap that makes you feel productive while accomplishing nothing. In the fertile farming regions where seasons determine survival, there lived two farmers who owned adjacent plots of equally rich soil. Both men understood agriculture and possessed the same resources, tools, and knowledge about crop cultivation, but their approaches to timing and action would determine vastly different outcomes for their families and futures. The first farmer was a perfectionist about timing, who believed that success required waiting for absolutely ideal conditions. As spring approached, he would study weather patterns obsessively, consulting multiple sources and analyzing every variable that might affect his crops. "The soil temperature isn't quite perfect yet," he would say, watching other farmers begin their planting. "The weather forecast shows possible rain next week. I should wait until conditions are absolutely optimal." This cautious farmer would spend weeks preparing and re-preparing, organizing his tools, researching new techniques, and waiting for that perfect window when everything aligned flawlessly. He convinced himself that this thorough preparation made him more professional and strategic than his neighbors, who seemed to rush into planting without his level of analysis. Meanwhile, the second farmer operated by a different philosophy. Good enough conditions today are better than perfect conditions that never come. When spring arrived and soil conditions were reasonable, not perfect, but workable, he would begin planting immediately. He understood that crops needed the full growing season to mature, and that waiting for perfect conditions often meant missing the planting window entirely. While his neighbor was still analyzing weather patterns and soil temperatures, the practical farmer was getting seeds in the ground. Was every day ideal? No. Did unexpected rain sometimes complicate his schedule? Yes. But his crops were growing while his perfectionist neighbor was still planning. As summer progressed, the contrast became stark. The second farmer's fields were flourishing with healthy crops that had benefited from the full growing season. The first farmer, having waited too long for perfect conditions, had finally planted much later and was watching his crops struggle to mature before the first frost. When harvest time arrived, the results were devastating for the perfectionist farmer. His late planting meant smaller yields and lower quality crops, while his neighbor enjoyed abundant harvests that provided security for the entire year. Here's what that story reveals about procrastination's hidden cost. While you're waiting for the perfect time to start your business, learn that skill or make that important change. Others are taking action with imperfect conditions and building momentum through experience rather than analysis. You think you've understood time management? This behavior fools everyone because it feels like harmless relaxation, but it's actually rewiring your brain for failure. Time waster 6. Watching TV. The sixth and final time waster that's quietly rewiring your brain for failure is watching television. You think it's harmless relaxation after a hard day, but the average American spends over 4 hours daily consuming passive entertainment that's literally training your mind to expect instant gratification, shortened attention spans, and passive consumption instead of active creation. Those hours add up to 28 hours per week, almost a full-time job spent absorbing other people's stories instead of building your own. You think you've understood time management? This behavior fools everyone because it feels like harmless relaxation, but it's actually rewiring your brain for failure. In the scholarly district of an ancient city renowned for learning and wisdom, there lived two intellectuals who both worked demanding jobs during the day and returned home each evening with the same amount of free time. Both men were equally intelligent and faced similar daily stresses, but their choices about how to spend their precious evening hours would create dramatically different trajectories for their knowledge, skills, and life outcomes. The first scholar believed that after a long day of mental work, his mind needed complete rest and passive entertainment. Each evening, he would settle into a comfortable chair and spend hours absorbing stories, dramas, and spectacles created by others. He would become completely absorbed in fictional tales, following the adventures and misfortunes of imaginary characters while his own real life remained unchanged. This entertainment-focused scholar justified his habits by saying he was relaxing and unwinding from the day's stresses. He would spend entire evenings watching elaborate performances, becoming emotionally invested in storylines that had no connection to his actual goals or circumstances. His mind became accustomed to being entertained rather than engaged, to consuming rather than creating. The second scholar took a radically different approach to his evening hours. Instead of seeking passive entertainment, he viewed this time as an opportunity for growth and development. He would spend his evenings reading works by great thinkers, practicing new skills, writing his own thoughts and observations, or engaging in meaningful conversations with other learned individuals. This active scholar understood that his evening hours were precious resources that could either advance his knowledge and capabilities or simply disappear into temporary pleasure with no lasting value. While his colleague was being entertained by other people's creations, he was developing his own ideas, expanding his expertise, and building skills that enhanced his daytime work. After 5 years, the contrast between their lives was remarkable. The first scholar remained in the same position, with the same capabilities and the same limited opportunities he'd had years earlier. His evenings of passive consumption had provided temporary pleasure but no lasting growth or development. The second scholar had become recognized as an expert in multiple fields, had written influential treatises that enhanced his reputation, and had developed a network of intellectual relationships that opened new opportunities. His active use of evening hours had compounded into significant personal and professional advancement. Here's what that story reveals about television's hidden cost. Those 4+ hours of daily TV watching aren't just time lost. They're training your brain to expect entertainment instead of engagement, to consume instead of create, and to be passive instead of productive. The time you spend watching other people's dreams unfold on screen is time you could spend building your own reality. There you have it. 6 massive time wasters that are stealing your most precious resource. Multitasking that destroys focus, worrying about things you can't control. Perfectionism that prevents completion, saying yes to everything except your own priorities. Procrastination disguised as preparation, and watching TV that rewires your brain for passive consumption. Here's the powerful truth. Eliminating just one of these time wasters can instantly give you back 1 to 2 hours every day. That's 7 to 14 extra hours per week to build the life you actually want, instead of just dreaming about it. Your challenge this week: choose the time waster that hit you hardest and eliminate it completely for 7 days. Track how many extra productive hours you gain. Which time waster is stealing the most from your life? Comment on the number of your biggest time thief and commit to defeating it. If this video opened your eyes to where your precious hours are disappearing, smash subscribe and share it with someone who's always too busy but never seems to accomplish their goals. Remember, time is the one resource you can never get back. Stop letting these thieves steal your future.